your job on Pathway with Friends is going to be to sequence yourself in the correct order in order to model cell communication. I designed the Pathway with Friends activity to be paired before the lab. That way we could have a common experience together, because students are coming in from all walks of life and maybe haven't heard about cell communication and have limited knowledge of homeostasis, but regardless of what they know, don't know what they think they know, like that was one activity we could all tie some things back to. The lab is about an interruption to cell communication when something goes wrong. So I want you to think about the pathway. Where was reception? That was the signal. That is the original message. If she's not there, do we get Chris running? No. What if the message is there and we take out a molecule in the middle? It's a Chris, she's not running, right? So we've got to have all the parts and the pieces there. And so I want you to think about how communication is going to change in this lab experience. And then your job is to come up with as many exploratory questions as possible, things that it makes you think of. And I've got some prompts to help. After they completed Pathway with Friends, I wanted to disrupt the model they had made, say, well, what would happen if we altered the cell communication? And so the lab experience, we actually altered cell communication when they ate the miracle berry and then tasted some of the fruits that they had available to them. And the purpose of that was to help them generate questions about the unit or questions they were curious about. So they were really focusing on exploratory questions at that point. All right, so what we're doing now, I've got our miracle berries. They are named after a protein called miraculin, okay? There is going to be an interruption to cell communication, but I don't want to spoil the fun on what happens. And so I'm telling you right now, the observations that are about to be made are unavoidable. And so I have created an experience with the specific purpose for you to communicate with one another about what you're noticing, making observations, and then hopefully generating questions out of the interest that you have on what the heck is going on. Before I hand you the lab supplies, I want you to know what you're doing. So tell me what you're doing and what the purpose is behind it.
So we're questioning how the cells are getting out of rhythm from how they normally are and how it's going to affect what we normally eat, and then we're like compare and contrast.
Okay, so I don't want you just to focus on taste. I want you to focus more on that broad phrase, homeostasis. And think, and what's happening. So you've got some prompts. Some of your questions will just come naturally. But when you get to struggling on developing a question, you've got these prompts to help you as well. So how close are you to your tablet being dissolved?
I'm not going.
A little bit. So I want y'all to kind of start together. I'm going to go and put the fruits down at your station, and you can decide when to begin, and you will make observations immediately. I'll drop some markers down, and you'll scribble your questions on your desk. So it was an experience they read about someone else had, and they weren't entertained by someone else's experiences, but instead they were able to talk from a personal perspective of how the taste changed over time.
Following time for individual generation of questions and sharing with teammates, students have an opportunity to learn from other groups. Mrs. Barkley uses the stay and stray strategy to enable students to compare their group's questions to those of others.
Half of your team is going to stray to the next group, and we're going to go clockwise, and you're going to have about 45 seconds at the next station to appreciate the questions that have been generated and to let them challenge your own thoughts and see if they spur any more questions to come out.
I want to know, why does it make the lemon taste sweeter?
What I said was I wonder what was in the miracle berry to cause like.
We're going to take a minute to discuss maybe what you learned from those conversations. Afterwards, you're going to select the question that you're most proud of. And when I say most proud of, it's probably going to be one that has a high interest level. Put your eyes up here. And you're going to place it on the graph where you believe it belongs. Interest level and complexity. When we say complexity, we're talking about how much does my brain have to think about this question. Doesn't mean it's difficult necessarily on just being wordy, but how much does my question cause my brain to think? If it's highly complex, it's going to be up here. If not, down here. If it's very interesting, over here. So where's the sweet spot in this graph? That's where we're trying to get. So you're going to talk it out, choose the question you're the most proud of, and then send one student to place it on the graph. I'll bring Post-it notes to you. And a student said, how could the Miracle Berry be beneficial to us? Like, what benefits could this have for us? And then she tied up a thought, like her next question was kind of a thought. She said, perhaps, could this help our sugar-crazed culture? So I felt like that question showed a lot of thoughts and layers behind it. And it was a question that showed that they could transfer knowledge from just that one experience at their desk to maybe how other people could benefit from the experience as well. I think my students have always had questions about the lessons that they're experiencing, but sometimes I haven't always stopped long enough to hear what they have to say or structured my room so that they had the voice to express those ideas. And so working with quality questioning and thinking about the different types of questions that students could ask, whether it's like self-questions or dialogic or exploratory, really has made me go back in my lesson planning of what's the purpose of what they're doing, like holding me accountable to what the purpose is. And so if I want students to be interested in the unit, it's important to do that at the beginning. And so for me personally, it's caused me to plan a little differently in order to generate more interest in my students by structuring plans that will help them generate those exploratory questions. And because I think my plan has changed and I'm actually slowing down and creating some space for students to talk, I feel like my students have gotten better at asking and communicating those questions with each other. So now the struggle and the excitement for the teacher is coming through their questions and figuring, which ones can we dive into and which ones would we spend more time on. But that would encourage students that their questions actually matter when their teachers take the time to stop, listen, and use that question as a springboard for another lesson.